Uh, Thanks all um, for, 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 for joining us tonight. My name is Courtney, and I am on the NSA Board of Directors. I am so excited for tonight. We are joined by two incredible voices behind the portrayal of Victor Aguilar in HBO's The Penguin. Actor Rhenzy Feliz, known for Runaways and Kanto, and now The Penguin, takes on the role of a character who stutters, and working closely with him behind the scenes was Marc Winski, a performer, speaker, and a fluency coach who brings both artistic and lived a, a experience to his advocacy for the stuttering community. Together, they collaborated to create a portrayal of stuttering that is rooted in truth and complexity. And I can personally say that this is probably the most authentic portrayal of stuttering that I have seen in TV. And I hope that folks here have all had a chance to watch it. And if you have not, I highly recommend. Okay, so I have some questions that we have prepared, and then I want to have time at the end for any audience questions. So I think what I'll do is, if you have questions as they come up, please put them in the chat, and we will get to them at the end. All right. So Marc, why don't you kick us off and sort of tell us a little bit about your role in this? You are someone who stutters and you work in entertainment. Um, what did this mean to you to be a voice consultant on this show? And what what did you hope to bring to Rhenzy's performance?
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. I think it was so important to really capture some authenticity and with a lot of characters, as you pointed out in entertainment, who happen to stutter, their character stutters, they're usually the brunt of the joke, or they're used as a sad sympathetic story. And when Rhenzy and I first chatted, uh, I think both of us were pretty much on the same page of that's not what we wanted. We didn't want any sympathy um, for Victor in that way. And it was just I felt so honored to be brought on with a team at HBO and Matt Reeves' company entrusting me with this. They kind of came out of the blue. They saw me on social media and through some project I did, and the story goes, one of the producers called and said, "Hey, do you know anybody who is 18 or older who's Latino to play 17, who's also an actor, who's also a person who stutters, who also can play top billing on a elite TV program on HBO." Um, at this time, I didn't know it was Batman, but I said no, I don't know that specific breakdown. Um, but they called back and said, "Hey, we got our guy. He doesn't stutter. Have you ever coached anyone?" I had, and um, I we just really wanted to have this opportunity to to treat this as just who he is as a human being.
Rhenzy, for you, this was your first time portraying a character who stutters. What was your process like in preparing for the role, and how did working with Marc influence your approach to Victor?
Yeah, I mean, tremendously. You know, how did Mark help it? How did he influence it? It was, I mean, it started from block one with my meetings with Mark. You know, it was like so much of it. He was incredibly giving, and he told me something from the beginning, which was super helpful. The idea that like there isn't there isn't a question. Don't be afraid to ask whatever you want to ask, whatever it is. There is no dumb question here. You know, he left it incredibly open so that I wouldn't feel uncomfortable in any way about bringing stuff up. And then an incredibly an open book as well. I mean, there's so much more. I guess to answer the question, the process was a lot of it was about first understanding, you know, prolongations and blocks and you know, um, repetition and running starts and all that kind of and all the different ways that someone, not all of them, but a lot of different ways that someone may stutter. And then it quickly became so much more than that. It became an understanding or trying to an understanding of going into the history, you know, someone's life, having had a stutter their entire life, and sort of what that might do to your body language, and what that might do to your confidence, and what not only what it might do, but and then we started figuring out what did it do to this specific kid, you know, because everyone has a different relationship with it, with having a stutter, and I think we started honing in on what Victor's was to his, and so much of that came through the history, came through the life, came through the sort of weight that it sort of that Victor specifically carried with him when having a stutter, and then some of the process was even going out and trying it in real life or making a lot. We made so many phone calls at the beginning. There it was. I remember like the first few days into it, we started having me call Trader Joe's and calling libraries and calling churches. And yeah, you learn a lot through those experiences. And if then it does something to you physically, to your body, that I guess the point was, remember that feeling, hold on to that feeling, and use it on the day whenever we have to go and shoot, you know. And so there was so much about living it and feeling it. And, you know, again, it's like what he said, you know, a couple minutes ago. It's like we tried reaching something that felt organic and natural and authentic and especially that authentic. I think he's right, and I'm really excited to hear you having said that, Courtney, as well. That that it felt like one of the more authentic portrayals that you've seen. That was always, it was never the intention make a joke of it or a gimmick of it, or that it was a thing being used to for whatever. This is a part of who he was, and this is something that he's lived with his entire life. And I think one of the fun things that I found exploring with Marc was, what does that do to, what did it do to Victor? You know, how does that shape who he is? It's not who he is, but what effects did it have on his life? You know, I think it'd be hard to ignore that it did have effects on his life. And so, but what I loved about the show was that it wasn't everything, you know, and so that was exciting as well.
Yeah, it was just piggybacking off of that. I know some of my favorite experiences were just breaking down each scene that we would do, right? And you would think, by teaching someone how to stutter, that's all we would work on, the blocks and the repetitions. And it was so interesting. We came to a point where we started to focus on how he, as a teenager, would try not to stutter. And as soon as that clicked in, I think that's where that true authenticity came in. Because even though he spoke fluently sometimes, we talked about that heaviness, right? That weight that he carried with him, of still circumnavigating his words. So we would have a set script and a dialogue that Lauren and her team wrote, and it was so great that the whole team entrusted us to take that dialogue and expand it, and put it on Victor. So we would go through exercises of, oh, his line is I don't know, please, 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 let me go, right? We spoke a lot about, are those the exact things that he was trying to say, or are those things that he tried to circumnavigate in order to just get speech out in that moment of trauma? So I think those conversations were so interesting, and then passing that along to the creative team, that were just so open about it. They were so like, yep, that sounds right, sounds good. And yeah,
It was great, the sort of trust that they would it really felt like we were able to do kind of, not always, but you know, like we were able to do whatever. There was no word that they wanted us to stutter on. There was no sentence that they needed us to do it on. It was never in that way. It was always whatever me and Marc would kind of. And I honestly, for most of the scenes, it was kind of, I would figure it out in the middle of the scene when it would sort of come. I got to the point where I was practicing it enough that I found it somewhat easier to not know on what words. I don't know, there were some scenes where we would kind of plot out more, a little bit more, you know, technically, where things would happen because of things like that, because of, okay, let's decide. And that was so much fun getting to figure that out. Like, just the freedom of that was fun, was getting to figure out, like, okay, like you just said, it's circumnavigating words, where he would go to say one word, and that was never in the script, but he would go to say one word, and there's a few moments, if you're looking really closely, that you can see, and they kept it in some of the edits, where you can see him start to say one word and switch it to another one, and it's so quick. And that's something that I was. There's little things that Marc would tell me about certain things, you know, that would happen in real life that maybe necessarily wasn't in the script, but that because of his lived experience, because of his knowledge on it, that we would be able to implement, you know, put in our own little way. And then more just for us, it was like we knew that we were doing something that was, you know, that would give a little bit of color in some places, like that felt more authentic to us.
And the actors too are our other actors were always so on board, right? Like
Yeah.
there was never a, hey, try this one, or like, no, they were such good artists just to stay in it, and there was so much listening. That was
Yeah.
the coolest part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually had a question. I don't know if I don't know if this is something that you guys can answer or not, but you know, what were there certain like how did you determine like which words were stuttered and how? So like how was it like random in the sense of like, okay, this word, you know, I want it to be a repetition. And I asked that because there was one scene that really stood out to me. Actually, two scenes. So one was when he got pulled over and he's talking to the cop. And it seems like there was a lot more stuttering and struggling there, which, you know, as people who stutter, there are often stories of people sharing, right, about how challenging it is to talk to cops and other people of authority. And then there was a scene where there might be a couple scenes where Victor is introducing himself, and there's a certain way that he's stuttering on his name that to me was different than how he typically stuttered on other words.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, this to bring up specifically the name one that you just brought up. That was something that again, Mark. That was a Mark idea for sure. Where he was, he had told me, or you could say what you had told me, but he basically told me that one of the things that's most difficult are the things you can't change. You know that you stutter on your name because it's the one thing that you can't. I'm not Mark all of it, or I'm not Tito all of a sudden. I'm Rhenzy. And so one of the things that's brutal is that you know that on the R you're gonna stutter because you can't change it, and that was something that we fought for on the day. Actually, I think it was Mark's idea. We went up to the director and asked if this one could be a much, it's a more elongated version of it. And I actually remember specifically that day Mark came up to me afterwards, and he said that, well, I mean, I don't want to give anything away right there, but it's like I remember him sort of feeling emotional in a way about that scene, because I think well, I don't know, how come Mark, I'll let you talk.
Which one was it? There were a
Well,
few.
when sorry, on
I got
Crown Point,
emotional
I'm
a
thinking
lot being on
when
set.
he's going to say Crown Point, I'm Victor. Where are you from? And he goes to say Crown Point, but he can't get the Crown Point
Yeah.
part out.
I think there was I think that both of us didn't want it to be a check mark, right? We didn't want stuttering to be like, okay, episode 1, check, he stutters, and then he's fluent. Which I can say we had to really make this stutter because it was so new to the business, right? Directors hadn't seen it before, so that brought us into eye contact, right, and sight lines, and and editing. I remember being so terrified that they'd edit out our good our good, really good blocked moments. And so when we came back into it after the actors and writer strike, I think both of us had to be on that page of stutter even more, which you can talk about that because that was a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And for context, for anyone who didn't know, halfway through our season, the actors strike happened. If you guys remember, the actors and the writers strike happened. So that was around episode 4 or 5, where we kind of had to take a break for 5 months. And I was honestly at first I was scared because I was like, I'm going to come back. Am I still going to have a job? But
Yeah, right.
once we found out that it was coming back, it was honestly an incredible opportunity for me because I got so much more time to get comfortable. I think I felt pretty uncomfortable throughout the first 4 or 5 episodes. I wasn't really feeling like I was doing any good. I was kind of harder on myself, and rightfully so. I don't think I was doing it. To be honest, I don't think I was doing a good job. But because we'd only had a month by that point, by the time we started shooting. Now it had 4 or 5 months to work on it, in my own place, and I'm on my own time, and so that was incredibly helpful. By the time we came back, yes. And for people who don't know as well, there's a director the first 3 episodes, another director 4 and 5, another director 6 and 7, another director 8. So as much as the showrunner and the producers and the writers are really, showrunner, they're running the show, they're running the ship, so to say. They also are writing and editing episodes all the time. The director's job is to come in and work on performances, and I think one of the things that we ran into, as is incredibly open as they were, I think one of the things they wanted to see was a sort of gradual shift from stuttering to maybe now finding more confidence. Victor finds a bit of confidence throughout the show, and that also equates to less stuttering as maybe one of the things that I'm not saying that was a goal of theirs. I think that there were moments where they maybe had nudged us in that direction, and I think it was Mark and I who and Mark giving me even more confidence to do so, because I'm also not like, I'm not Colin Farrell, I'm not the lead of the show. I was also very afraid that they'd just find somebody else. But sort of having the confidence to go up and say, hey, that's not what happens, and that's not the one that we want to show either. It's like maybe there are cases, of course, of someone getting older and not having it, but that wasn't the story we were telling with Victor. That wasn't what happened with Victor. And so just sort of trying not to just do it in moments where he felt nervous, trying not to just do it or not do it in moments where he felt confident, kind of being a little bit inconsistent with when it happens was also a goal of ours. And sort of, there was always a little bit, although not much, because anytime we would go, hey, I think it would be a little bit stronger here, they'd hold their hands up and let us kind of, they sort of gave us reign of that part of the show and that part of the characters. I think they know at that point, they knew that we were doing, that we cared, and that it mattered to us, and that part of the show we had put a lot of thought and effort into and energy into. So I think they sort of stepped back, thankfully, to their credit, and let us do, whenever we come with an idea, they'd allow us to at least try it. And thankfully, if they wanted to take it out, they could have, and they didn't. So
yeah.
So
There's that scene towards the end, speaking about confidence, right? Where he comes in on the motorcycle down into the trolley drug lab, and he's talking to his boys, and he gives a talk to them, and we could have gone with, oh, he's confident now, he's gonna be even more fluent. We actually talked about it that day, saying how cool would it be if being higher on the food chain meant he didn't care if he stuttered even more. These guys, what are they going to do? Because he's got that confidence in him to stutter more and say the exact things that were on that page. And just being able to portray that was just something I was so proud of that Rhenzy got to do.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of the show. And I mean, it seems obvious. It seems like it should be a part of every show, but this is the first show where like somebody is someone who stutters that is portrayed, in a neutral way, in the sense of like this is just a part of who he is. And it's not really talked about, which I think in this case is kind of like a good thing, right? Like people are just sort of accepting of it for the most part, right? Which we'll get to. Um, but yeah, it seems like even though the character becomes more confident, like you said, Mark, like his uh frequency of stuttering doesn't change, right? And I think that that's such a common stereotype and trope that we see a lot in TV and movies, where, you know, somebody just needs to become a little bit more confident, and they will become fluent. We've seen that in The King's Speech. We've seen it in shows like Bridgerton. Um, so I really appreciated that part of it. So along those lines, Mark, you've spoken a lot about how people who stutter often go unheard and unseen. And from your per perspective, how can performances like Renzi's help kind of shift that narrative? And what does authentic visibility look like in 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 Hollywood?
Yeah, I think seeing Victor on the screen, just living his life, where stuttering really didn't have anything to do with the show at all, and um, was so important. Because I know as an actor that growing up never saw it. I still don't see stuttered voices in entertainment and media and the arts. And I think we need all all of these different disabilities seen doing everyday or not everyday activities, uh, to just know that people exist, all types of people. Um, and the what was so cool is Renzi and I got to craft this. So as we spoke about earlier, we really got to lean in to some parts that we really felt were important, stuttering and character wise. Um, Everything was thrown back to the character. Everything was, would Victor do this? What would Victor do in this? Who is he talking to? Would he try to hide his stuttering a little bit, talking to a mob boss who he knows could kill him like this, or not? Um, Compared to talking at home with his family. And I think just seeing and hearing that on any screen, but especially a platform like this was tremendous.
One of the to piggyback off that, yeah, getting to craft and how much it would change was really interesting. One of my favorite scenes to do was which I still don't know if anyone. I watched it from a different perspective today. Episode 3. Let me get the scene out. Episode 3, when I meet Sophia for the first time. She walks into the apartment, and I'm very nervous around her, obviously. And I also know that I know where her brother is, that she would kill anybody for. So there's a lot going on in that scene. And also, this is a new person I'm meeting, and I don't want. And what I realized today is, what if people are watching it, and I bet most people did, not knowing that what I'm trying to do is not stutter in front of her. If they just think I'm being nervous. I looked at the scene from the other day, and I was petrified, mortified, I should say, because I was like, if they just think I'm trying to act nervous right now, that's not a very good job. If that's what they're thinking I'm doing, it's not very good performance. But if they realize what I'm doing is trying my damnedest to not stutter so that she doesn't think I'm nervous, because I'm thinking if she hears me stuttering a lot, then she's going to think that I know something, so I need to not stutter. So if you hear him, he's like circumnavigating so much, and he's a lot of ums and a lot of but, and trying to like pretend as if you're thinking when you're not. It's like, that was one of my favorite scenes, because it's the only time we really got to show it. Because Victor doesn't talk to that many different people in the show. You see him talk to Oz, you see him talk to Francis, you see him talk to Sophia once, twice, and you see him talk to Squid and his parents. That's basic. That's everyone he interacts with. Maybe the cop, but that's basically everyone he interacts with in the show. And one of my favorite things was also getting to show an arc from when he's the first time he meets Oz, and the way he stutters around Oz, from the first couple episodes to the way he stutters by the end with Oz. And I think it's just much more. He's so much more comfortable to stutter in front of Oz. Instead of before, I think he's forcing it out so much more. It's so much more physical. Him trying to push it out of him. Versus at the end, that scene by the river where he says your family to me. He sort of kind of gets stuck on the F. I think it's the F in that scene, and it's kind of, and I liked how comfortable he felt in front of Oz when watching it back, and so yeah, just the arc of it, and it depends so much on who you're talking to, and so that was fun. That was fun getting to do that, getting figure that out, like trying to make it authentic, trying to make it real, I guess.
That was talked about too, though, right? The characters have arcs in the show. They're where they're going, where they're starting, where they're finishing. Victor had 2 arcs, his character arc, and then we created a stuttering arc too, of where we wanted that to go. And I think that's what made this type of education and learning different than other dialects would be. Because if someone is learning a Cockney dialect from London, there's not much underlying depth to that. Our arc was crafted with that confidence that we talked about, and it was just so important to make sure that was done authentically.
Yeah, because one of the things we spoke about so much was the physicality of it. For Victor, it's incredibly physical, and all the secondary behaviors that you do in order to get the words out, or what you think works to get the words out, and how that changes over the course of the show, and how if you feel comfortable in front of someone. And that was another thing. And when he speaks to his parents, there was a real effort on trying to make that be like the most, and I'm upset because it wasn't the first. Anyways, I have my own insecurities about all the stuff, but that was a very cool moment, because it's he's supposed to be incredibly comfortable around his parents, and they know that he's stutters, so he's openly able to do it. And now he's having an argument with them, so it might seem like he's a little bit like he's struggling, but I think it didn't come from that. It came from the argument. And so getting to see that versus how he is in front of Sophia for the first time, and versus how he is in front of that cop for the first time, and how kind of this like weird mangle of ashamed and down and kind of odd he feels in the restaurant scene whenever Oz stands up for him, but he doesn't. I think it's a mix of emotion. I don't think it's a simple thing what it's going through his head in that moment. And I've never actually gotten to put it into words what's happening to Victor in that scene. I always just had a feeling that I felt like it was. And I don't feel like sometimes it hurts to put things to get too in your head about exactly what is this feeling and why. Sometimes if you have it, I'd rather just go with it. And I think in that moment, it's a weird mix of stuff, but one of them being like embarrassment, yes, and another one feeling small when you want to feel big. And I think in that moment, although Oz has an incredibly kind thing, kind of giving him space, kind of giving him a little bit of confidence to take up space. I think, and Victor does appreciate it. I think it's tough for him to want to need help, to feel like you need it. I think that's what's going through Victor's head. It's like, you don't have to do that. Like, but also I couldn't get through the words. So is it my fault? Am I the one wasting this guy's time? And there's a lot of things, there's a lot of, self pain that Victor's putting on himself in those moments. And so it's an interesting thing to see how that changes over the course of time with someone.
Can anybody else here relate to what Rhenzy just said? Because I'm pretty sure it was just so cool. I was just seeing you inhabit this. I was just like so proud of you for putting in all of this work, because he would go home and train and make calls, and I had him doing hard stuff, basically reversing of, well, no, basically doing speech therapy to stutter. And just it was so cool to see these light bulbs in you, Rhenzy, of, oh, is that what this means? Oh, is that how he is feeling this amount of shame here while still having joy here at the exact same time? And
Yeah.
you captured that, man. You really did.
Thanks. That's incredibly kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was an incredibly eye-opening thing. I mean, just even so much about, like, physically is kind of when one of the light bulbs went off for me. And also, you tried your damnedest. I'll give you all the credit in the world to make me feel comfortable and open to do it, to stutter and stutter more and to really hold them. Damn it, if I wasn't so fearful and in my head about.
Talk about that a little bit. That's a cool journey for you.
I mean, it was brutal at the beginning, feeling like I'd never really seen it on screen, and how I think I was so in my head about how an audience would take in Victor, and I loved him very much, but I was afraid, and I knew that based on the arc of the show, we needed the audience to also root for Victor, because of the big ending. If you don't like Victor, who cares about the ending, but you kind of want to like him. And so I was afraid that the audience wouldn't give him any grace. They wouldn't have any empathy. And so I was incredibly afraid of stuttering too much, of doing it, of overly doing it. And it wasn't until we got back from the break, where I had been working on it throughout the break, that I felt so much more comfortable. So much more comfortable, so much more open to allowing it to really, to where it had a life of its own at that point. It became so much more easy. It became easier for me to let go and to not worry so much, and to just, I just trusted that it was there, because by then it wasn't there beforehand, at least maybe the confidence in it wasn't. But it did get there afterwards, to where there were little things that you would come up to me that I was doing that we hadn't talked about or worked on. I remember one time you didn't even want to tell me. You were like, I don't even know if I want to tell you, but you're doing this one thing that's like, we didn't even talk about it, but you're doing it and it's awesome. And I didn't want him to tell me, because I'm like, I don't want to start thinking about me doing it. But I found out later that it was like something that I was doing with my breath that was interesting. That happens authentically whenever you're stuttering. And so I think it found its own life after a while, which was hard on me, because I was so in my head about it. But I think in the end, I got more comfortable.
For sure.
Yeah, this is This is such an interesting switch of like, yeah, like I think what uh Pam said in the chat, right? Like we're training people on how to stutter, right? And this is something I know, a lot of people on here probably relate to, which is, we try so hard to hide this thing and this part of us is oftentimes not accepted, right? And now it seems like it's fully out here, right? And we are trying to uh, give it life and give it space. And there's something really cool about stuttering, taking up space in this way. Switching gears a little bit, and you briefly talked about this, R- 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 Renzi. But after this experience, do you feel like your re re relationship to communication or fluency or identity has shifted at all? And is there anything that you maybe carry with you now that, perhaps you didn't before?
For sure. I mean, yeah, of course it's changed. Um, I think before I just didn't give it much thought, to be honest. It wasn't that I felt a certain way. It wasn't that I had a way that I felt about it. It was just that I didn't. It was just that I hadn't given it any real thought. The idea of fluency, and then of course learning about it, you just become. I think with anything, the more you learn about something, the more you can become empathetic. And I think that it was just something that didn't really live inside me at all. The idea of it. And now there is this sort of I guess not an understanding, because I can never really understand. I can try and get close, and I can try and find some more experiences of my own, and but I'll never truly be able to understand, not all the way. But I think that growing closer and understanding helps you get to a place where you can be more empathetic in situations. Like if I were to come across, which I actually have a couple of times, people have come up to me and been very kind about my portrayal in the show regarding the stutter and the fluency of it all, and they've been very kind. And I think that allowing that space, allowing sort of waiting, being patient. I think there's so much that I wouldn't have known matters, or like maybe I wouldn't have known that what it would mean to someone, maybe, or how it would feel if someone finishes your sentences or brushes you, or what. I don't think I would have had any empathy for that experience, and not because I didn't care, but more because I hadn't really given it much thought. And so definitely, is there a change in how I think about it? Of course there is. And I think I'm a better person for it.
Do you mind telling our trailer talk story? Do you remember this, when you were just so open with me about being so scared to stutter, even being a person who doesn't stutter? You were so nervous, like, and I'm getting chills, but you spoke about things that people who stutter say and think about who's gonna take the time to listen, who's gonna stop and watch my show and not fast forward my scenes saying, "Oh, look at this stuttering idiot. It can't even talk." Do you mind talking a bit about that
Yeah,
journey?
I
Because
mean,
that was so cool to me. That was so
I
cool.
remember you saying that when I was having a talk with you, like, this is crazy that you're even saying this. This is exactly what people who naturally stutter, what they exactly their thoughts. but it's an incredible fear. I mean, it's just like, it's never really happened in this way before on a TV show where the scene isn't about stuttering. The scene's about, are we going to get the mushrooms drop? Is it the drug? Did we get the drugs? And Victor can't, it's hard for him to get through the sentence. And so I was worried that, like, I loved him. I was worried nobody else would. I was worried nobody would care. I was worried that
Huge, man. That's huge.
I was worried that, like, that they wouldn't find the empathy that I know is deserved. I thought they would skip. And I was afraid of, if that's happening, then we lose them. Then we don't have them for the ending, and we don't have them. We lose the point. We lose the thing. Wanting to keep it as organic and natural as possible, while still understanding that there's something, that HBO has something larger to play. There's a big finale that we're trying to get to, and so the fear of that. And I think it became much easier after the break, once I became more comfortable, and I think I felt more natural doing it. It didn't feel like I was putting something on. After a while, it felt like I had found the place where there was like, again, we wouldn't pick words. Most of the scenes we wouldn't pick words to stutter on. I would just naturally find one, and I'd get there. And the physicality of it, I wasn't thinking about it as much. I think I was just so in my head. I was so in my head about them not caring about Victor, and specifically because of the time that it would take to get through, the time that he would need, time that he would take. And I don't know if I don't think the fear ever totally left me. It definitely diminished over time. I don't think the fear ever totally left me until the show came out and I saw the sort of outpour of emotion for him, especially towards the end. And there's a big finale that happened, and I felt a lot of feelings towards him. And that's when it sort of hit me emotionally as well. I even got emotional about it, thinking that people did find the empathy, and it reminded me of something that happened when me and Marc were making calls. Actually, there were a couple of people that were very rude about me taking time on a phone call, having a stutter, trying to ask them what's in stock or whatever. They would not be patient sometimes. Sometimes they'd hang up. They wouldn't wait. There was one woman who worked at Trader Joe's. I remember because I got emotional then, who was so incredibly kind. At first she didn't get what was happening. It's over the phone. She's like, hello. She didn't get what was going on. And then after a moment, I think she realized what the situation was, that I had a stutter. And so she said, no, it's okay. I'm like, I'm sorry. She said, no, I would have constantly apologized because I felt like,
Yeah.
I felt like
that if I may for a second.
Yeah.
That was the coolest thing, was these automatic trigger responses of apologizing, shortening your sentences, that all that happened naturally. I'm like, yo, I didn't teach you that. I didn't, and like that was really big for you.
Yeah, no, I remember.
That was so cool to see.
Yeah, I remember you saying that like, hold on to that. Like, those are the things that are real. That's the stuff that happens. This sort of feeling of that's what I kept feeling. Like, one, my body would get incredibly hot anytime I had to speak to someone. That was the first thing that, like, I had a physical reaction. Armpits were going, and I was uncomfortable as all get out. And so that feeling, hold on to that. And then, but to finish the story, she was incredibly kind and gracious and patient and told me, take your time. No, don't worry about it. And anytime I'd finally get the question out, do you have this in store? She would, okay, I'll let you know right now. She would go and check, and she was just so kind. And I forget why I brought up that story, but
empathy about being heard and being seen.
Right. So the story I was telling reminded me of that. Empathy, being seen. She was incredibly kind and she was incredibly open. I forget why I brought that story. There was something that I was saying. It doesn't matter. But that's something that stuck with me was the kindness that she showed was the same kindness that I found that so much of the audience showed to Victor. I expected them to be maybe like the deli guy that hung up on me, whereas I think an eye-opening experience was that the audience is more empathetic than I gave them credit for. But I didn't know. And then I was afraid they would be.
Yeah, we talked about that, right? I I think I got angry once at you. I think I said, "Why are you judging Victor? Like, why are you like shaming him for like that's how he talks?
Yeah.
Like, that's the exact opposite of what we want."
Right.
And I think that was another light bulb moment of, oh, I just didn't know. Like, and that was so cool to see that.
How do you both think stuttering can be portrayed in stories without being sort of the thing that defines a character?
I'll take this one. Just do it. Just just have it be seen. Um, that's kind of it. It's pretty black and white, right? Just if someone stutters and they're an actor, then their character has a stutter.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I do.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I can try and add something. So the
Sure.
question is
Sure.
is
Whatever you want to.
yeah, no, the question is how do we get it like more on camera? Is that the question? How do we get it more on screen?
I guess it
Yeah,
can
I
be.
mean,
That's a good one too, though, right? Because we see it. How I just it was we had to work so hard, us and the team of Penguin, to even get it through to HBO too,
Oh, right.
who finally said, "Oh, this is really cool. Let's keep it." Because they were scared, right? Like they were scared.
There was a version of it about a week before we started shooting where they were going to pull the plug on it in general and just do the character as if Victor were fluent. That was definitely a thought. That was an idea that was circulating, and I don't think it was because they were afraid of what would happen if you put someone who doesn't in a role. Who does? Which I can understand the fear. And then it wasn't until they had seen the work that Marc and I had been doing that they that I think they saw the value in it and that it wasn't sort of gimmicky and that it wasn't maybe making fun of in a way that maybe they were afraid it would be. I don't know what they were afraid of. Like I said, I didn't have a conversation with them, so I'm not entirely sure. But I know that there was fear about potential what the response would be, and I don't think it was until they saw video and actual like iPhone footage of me doing the stutter like a week before we started shooting that they were like, all right, well, you know, let's see what they can do. They gave us a chance.
I think we'll switch to audience questions at this point. Feel free to keep putting them in the chat. I will read through the ones in the chat. And if you have any questions that you want to say out loud, maybe raise your hand and I can call on you, as in like the raise hand function on Zoom. Okay. Hannah asks if Rhenzy, you can tell us how this specific role in training will carry on with you as you continue in your career.
Oh man, how will it carry on with me in my career? This role, what carry on this role? The specific character in the role?
Yep.
I mean, hopefully it gets me more roles in the work. I'd like to work.
Totally
So
fair.
hopefully that happens more often. And I mean, what an incredible show to be a part of. I think I've realized this about myself. I'm a little bit, I tend to be on the self-critical side of things. And I think that it's really hard for me to watch something that I'm in and enjoy it. And this one is the closest I've gotten to that feeling. And so I think it's really cool, and I'm so honored to get to work on this thing, and I'm so honored to have gotten to work with Marc as well on creating this. And I think that the level of focus, the level of energy that I saw on this set, not just from our cast, who definitely had it in spades, but our crew as well. The amount of energy and focus that everyone put into their craft, I think, is something that I'm going to take with me forever. What I saw Colin doing every day, what me and Marc went through for weeks and months, throughout the entire making of the show, by the way, as well. I mean, I think it's obvious by now that he was on the entire time, but it wasn't just it was every single day. And also what Dee Dee did, who played Frances as Oz's mother, what Kristen did, who played Sophia. I mean, everyone in the show was so fantastic, and they worked so hard. And Jessica Drake was a dialect coach for them as well, and she killed it, and they all killed it. And so I think that hopefully something that I take with me, that I'll do my darnest to, is a level of focus and a level of attention and a level of energy that we all kind of put towards this thing to try and make something cool.
Cool. And for you, Marc, how do you plan on using this specific experience with Rhenzy to continue to spread awareness, not only in the stuttering community, but to the rest of the world?
Yeah, just being given the opportunity with a team like this again, as Rhenzy said, like this, the passion that this team brought across the board, um, just really shows that people do care. If given the opportunity, people care, and I think that goes from all aspect to telling new stories, to creating new characters. It's people have to be shown and taught, and it's I mean, I joke about, I say, come for the authentic stuttering, but stay for the kick-ass piece of IP. Like, it's I again, I was so honored to be a part of this hard working, passionate, incredibly talented team, crew, producers, actors, and it's an experience that I don't think I even fully realize how grand it is yet.
Desiree asks if you, Marc, were a part of every episode.
Yeah, if Renzi was on set, I was there to help him however he needed me.
Yeah, and that was a massive help, by the way. I mean, my God, had he not been there every day, I think I would have been sent into a spiral of some sort. It was incredibly helpful, and we'd basically go over every scene before we got to set. I mean, we would go over, like, we would Zoom call or FaceTime all the time, like, you know, the day before, the 2 days before, 3 days before, and just go over the scenes. A lot of times it was, by the time we got a little more comfortable, I think we would just make sure we had all the beats down and the points. But on set, it was also nice just having someone in the same corner You know, I'm a younger actor and afraid of, you know, speaking your mind, having a voice isn't always the easiest things when there's so many heavy hitters on set, and
There were big names and big producers
yeah,
of major projects.
yeah. And we knew this was gonna, you know, they were gonna push it like a major project. We didn't know if it was gonna be one of those yet, but it ended up being very cool. But we didn't know that. You never know anything at the time, and so it was scary. And having Marc in my corner was always incredibly helpful whenever some conversations needed to be had about, you know, what's real and what isn't, and what would be authentic here and what wouldn't be. So
Otto has a question for Rhenzy. When did you know when to stutter? Was it on cue, or did you pick? And I think you briefly mentioned this earlier that you chose it, right?
well, like 80% of the time it was just improvised. I would do them differently on every scene. I would do them differently in every take. I would just find it. And then like I'd say a good 20, maybe 30. I don't know exactly the split, but some percent of it we would go through and kind of pick certain moments or certain things to highlight because it was something about a star that we wanted to that we wanted to like we wanted to find some real moments that it, you know, there's certain things like for example on his name, like that was something that we had talked about beforehand, to stutter on the name because it's something that you can't change. There's certain words that I would go through the script and realize I'm going to switch this word. You know, the word is whatever, I can't come home tonight, and if he's going to stutter on the C on can't, I am not coming home tonight. You know, he would switch it. So we would do little things like that where we'd pick beforehand. But for the most part, it wasn't on any words. We wouldn't pick beforehand. We would work on everything that needed to be worked on physically, and you know, who are we talking to, what level. That we even had like a meter that we would talk about. And then we'd go in and kind of just you know, I'd just find it. We would just feel it out, whatever felt real and authentic and natural, to Victor in that moment.
A really cool moment that stands out to me was that we were able to craft things that hadn't been seen before.
Mm.
For instance, there's this scene where he's flirting with his girlfriend, and they're on top of the roof, and the fireworks are going off, and he's like showing that Riz, and I said, "Hey, try stuttering through flirting." And it was so powerful to see that a guy can stutter and flirt and have charm and stutter and get the girl without being fluent. And then
Yes.
everything explodes. So and the world falls
And
apart.
this world
Like,
comes crumbling down immediately thereafter.
immediately after that happens.
Yes. No, I was like fully in that very powerful uh 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 stuttering moment. And then I was like, I had all these feels, and then boom. Yeah. Um should I place here? In Ivans says Marc that he read uh the autobiography of uh James Earl Jones, and he described how he felt more comfortable acting on Broadway or in plays on stage than acting for a scene in a movie or a show. And he's asking, Marc, what is your experience with this?
Yeah, my experience as an actor who stutters has definitely changed. I think when I started in this career, I thought I had to be like these incredible actors who we are told they stutter, but we never actually like really see it happening. And so I thought I had to be like that as well, and I kind of did all of the tools and tricks, and I would circumnavigate sentences. And sure, sometimes I would have moments of memorized dialogue that became a little more fluent, but it was all a facade of fear of I can't stutter and be an actor. Um, and so I know I'm on my own personal journey with that, and being seen for my own voice and authentically portraying these characters that if I go in for a role like that character is going to have a stutter whether it's written that way or not. Like that is part of me, and it's just so much more fun to just focus on the acting, to focus on the character and not focus on trying to change something that's so authentically me. Great question.
Desiree asks Rhenzy if this is your first time meeting a person who stutters, and also if the cast and crew knew about your character stutter, which I'm assuming they do, and what their thoughts were.
Is it the first time you're meeting someone? Do you mean, I'm assuming she's asking when I met Mark.
Mark, yes.
I think I've met. I've definitely heard someone speak who's had a stutter. Maybe I don't know if I've ever had a full conversation with someone who has a stutter. Mark is definitely, it's the most I've ever spoken with anyone. But so is that my first time meeting necessarily, but Mark is definitely the close relationship I've had with someone. And then the cast and crew know, yeah, they knew because it's written in as that way, but and what was their reaction to it? I don't know what the crew's reaction to it was. I guess I never. Oh, actually, you know what's interesting? When the first couple weeks of shooting, maybe week and a half, it's the ending of episode 1. We're sat down on this park bench. Me and Oz have slushies, and
It was day one for me. My
that was day 1 for
first day
you.
on set. Yeah,
No
that was my
way.
first day on set.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was early on. I mean, it was really early on. And one of the things that I was doing in that scene, something we had worked on, was him sort of pushing out the words and really pushing and really struggling to get out the words. And so I thought someone just came into my apartment. So really, 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 really pushing out the words. And the boom operator, he came up to me in between some of the setups and kind of whispered in my ear and said, "Hey, I shouldn't have. Damn it. I didn't want to." Anyways, one of the crew members came up to me and asked me. He said, he didn't ask me, but he said, "Hey, man, I've got my daughter. She's 8 years old. She's got a stutter, and I just wanted to say, I was getting emotional just watching the scene because so much of what you're doing, the way you're pushing on the words, she does the exact same thing. And I just wanted to say how great it is, and I'm happy that you guys are doing it." I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet." And so that was really early on, and that was a crew member. Other than that, I don't have any conversations with the crew about it. The cast was incredibly open. I even asked Colin once, like, "Hey, man, how is it looking? Give me some sort of guideline here. Am I doing all right? Like, what's going on? Should I turn it down? Should I turn it up? Should it be different? What do you think?" And he's like, "Lean into it, man." He goes, "Lean into it. Don't hold back. More." And so I was like, so that kind of gave me more confidence as well. So that was about all I talked about it with the crew, with the cast. There were moments where people, they would be kind, and some of the cast members, Dee Dee or Kristen, would come up to me and if I think I did a good job in a scene, they'd be nice or whatever. But that about it was really between me and Mark, like 99%, 95% of the conversations, and then a good amount was also with before we started shooting with Craig. on the first 3 episodes, on sort of, you know, once we establish it, it's established. Those first couple episodes are that's what we're gonna go. We have whatever we do in the first few weeks of shooting. That's what it has to be for the next 6 months. So those first few weeks were incredibly crucial. And those were the times where I was having the most conversations with Craig before we started shooting about what kind of things worked, what kind of things didn't, what kind of secondary behaviors I was working on, the ones he liked, the ones he didn't. So he had a hand in crafting it as well, for sure. And yeah, and there were, yeah. So there's so much stuff that comes up about cameras and lighting and eye contact and these kinds of things that are, you know, contradictory to each other. That sort of, you know, don't mesh well, but we found our ways in. We found our ways in, which was great.
That is just so cool. I mean, it's just so cool that you both were able to sort of push through all of that and like really change the way that like Hollywood does things, right? Because yeah, it doesn't have to be a certain way, and we can learn, you know, how to accommodate different types of communicators. I want to read some comments that were in the chat. One from Joe L, who said, I absolutely fell in love with Victor, almost from the beginning, and his character arc was just incredible. I truly believe his character transcended so many avenues and taught all of us to live a more authentic life. And I also want to read the comment from Veronica, who said, I'm so glad that I joined this Zoom today. I didn't know what to expect. My 15-year-old son loves the show and told me several times that he felt so inspired by you and seeing someone on the show who looked like him and was allowed to stutter. I hadn't seen the show, but was glad to hear him say that he was inspired. Thank you. There's a couple more questions. I don't want to pronounce your name wrong. Thais asked, Victor's slight stutter is such a striking detail. Can you share how that choice emerged? Was it something you brought in during your character work, a direction from the showrunner, or a collaboration between you and the writers? I'm curious how the team decided it was the right layer to add to Victor.
It's a great question, and as far as I know, it was Craig's idea, the director of the first 3. I'm like 85-90% sure that's true. That's at least what I've heard, and I think the reason it came to be, I wish, you know, I don't want to speak for him, and this could be wrong for all I know, but what I remember having conversations about was that he when HBO when there was moments of pushback from HBO, like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do it at all. It's just nix the whole thing. I think his pushback was, I don't understand how Oz lets him live in the first episode if he can't relate to him. Because I think he relates to him because they both have this ability. You know, Oz has his leg, and Victor with his stutter, and of course they come from the same place, the same neighborhood. So I think it's just, if I can't get in from moment one, I shoot him in the head. So I think you know, in the very first episode, for people who don't know, he has me at gunpoint basically. It's one of the first scenes, not a spoiler. He has me at gunpoint, and so the director couldn't get past, how does he let him live? And so I think that's why he was so adamant about he needed it. And I think, and also he told me he thought it was cool. He just had never seen a character have a stutter on a show where it wasn't the main focal point, and he just wanted to kind of, He wanted it. He wanted something like that as well. So I think those were the two driving factors.
I'm not sure, but I don't think they knew going in though quite what that would do to Victor, and how that would change him in so many aspects. And that was like so cool that they just trusted us to
Right.
create this. It was just it with how much control there is in Hollywood to every minute detail. I'm not sure about you, Randy, but I just felt so honored every day that Lauren and Dylan and Craig and Colin were like, just bring it into us, and we'll okay.
Right. Yeah. Basically, whatever we decided, they kind of let us be like we were the ones who knew. You know, we were they hadn't spent
The
nearly as
experts,
much.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
experts.
exactly. We were the experts. That's what I was looking for. We were the experts, and it's like they allowed us to come in with ideas, and they'd be like, great, that sounds cool. When I told them that when we told them that we wanted to do on episode 3 for that scene with Sophia, we wanted to, can we throw in way more ums and buts, and like him, you know, he's really nervous around her, can we do that on this scene? They were like, sure. There was almost never any pushback on these things. Can I switch a word here? Can I change a word here? Can I do this? Can I do that? Can we prolongate on Crown, on Crown Point? Can we just be there and he can't get to that word for a while? Can we show that? And they were down. They were game. They thought it was, I think they knew that what we were trying to bring was something authentic and something real, and they allowed it to live. They allowed that to happen, which
very rare. Very rare. Like
yeah.
I feel like those things of and kind of all of the actors were able to kind of play that way too and bring their own ideas, and it was such a collaborative experience throughout. It was so special. It was so special.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a great question, one that I had as well. Lauren asks if you both helped with the writing in terms of how Oz and the other characters responded to stuttering, specifically the restaurant scene and how Oz told the waiter to be patient.
I didn't the restaurant scene specifically. I didn't give any notes on how it was written. Did you, Mark?
Not really. Other than I had a conversation with Lauren, the showrunner, about being a person who stutters, but that was them. That was their scene of taking up space, and it's. I mean, I know I've gotten a lot of response about that scene, and Rhenzy and I would text back and forth saying, "Oh, this person said this, and it's so cool." And like, no, that was them. That was that was really cool to see.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, exactly. It was there. It was when I read the script, that was in there, and yeah, the outpouring of sort of I think it made a lot of people feel something, which is always the goal. You know, in any art that you make, you want someone to feel something. And I think that a lot of people felt something in that scene, and a lot of people, they really kindly reached out and they would DM me, either it's on Instagram or something. And even though I don't respond to them all, I do see them and I do appreciate the kind messages. But yeah, you can't respond to all of them. But it is very, very kind when people do, and I think people felt something, which is powerful and incredible.
I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions if anybody has them. Otherwise, we will wrap things up. maybe we can end sort of with some final thoughts. Anything either of you want to say or share?
This is just to Rhenzy. I was just so proud of you every day, just being so open to the experience.
Mm.
You were so vulnerable of taking this on your shoulders and just blew it out of the park, and you got a lot of good things coming your way.
I would
A
hope.
lot of good stuff. Like,
No,
it was a
that's
pleasure, an absolute honor, pleasure.
that was that's incredible actually to say. Yeah, no, I mean, from your mouth to God's ears. Hopefully, if more things come my way, but I really do. I really do appreciate it. You're talking about me being vulnerable. I think that that's the perfect kind of. You were just so open and so incredibly helpful, and it always felt like there was an open dialogue between us that we could talk, that I could ask him. That was the thing, because there's so much to learn. There's so much to try and understand, to begin to understand, if you want to even have a chance at it feeling real, at it looking somewhat authentic. And you were always there, and you were always that, and you were always kind of like there was always a North Star to look to in you, and so I appreciate that.
Thanks, Rance.
Yeah, I thank you both from the bottom of my heart for bringing such a gift to the stuttering community. I know that that was not the purpose of the show, but it really has been a gift. And I remember when the show was airing. I mean, almost everywhere I go, almost everywhere I went, someone would talk about that show. And this was even like before people knew that I stuttered. It was just a topic of uh conversation. And it really helped me be able to connect with people more, because, a lot of people really resonated with so many aspects uh 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 Victor's character, that I think came through via stuttering, that really helped change um this dialogue. So I'm really excited for hopefully more stuttering representation in film and shows and books and all the things. And I thank you both for your time here tonight. It has been a a a a pleasure.